Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Brier Grieves Insurance. Are you in the need of car insurance or looking to upgrade your car insurance? Well, let the good people at Brier Grieves Insurance help you with that. They are the best in the business to work with, whether it's car insurance or homeowners, flood boaters, or business insurance. For more information about them, visit their website. That's briergrievesinsurance.com, or you can give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. It's a Tuesday edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining with us this afternoon as we get rocking and rolling. We're going to talk about the Bucs targeting bigger players this year. There was a very interesting comment made by head coach Todd Bowles last week at the NFL Combine. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that topic, especially at the defensive tackle position, which I believe that's where he was going with that response. So a lot to get into on today's show. We'll answer any super chats that come our way as well. So I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague and co-host of the Pewter Report podcast, SR, Scott Reynolds. How we doing, Scott?
Good, Matt. How are you? Hello, Pewter people. Glad to be with you today. And yeah, I thought that was a very interesting comment that Todd Bowles made at the podium. Matt, you were there for that. I was upstairs doing work on pewterreport.com, putting together some stories, updating our combine tracker. What exactly did Todd Bowles mean by we want to get bigger players? Did he mention any specifics about position groups at all? Because that can mean anything from cornerbacks to linebackers to defensive line.
He didn't specify at the moment. At the time, he said, I think we need to get bigger from a team standpoint. We were smaller at some positions from a size standpoint. I like to get bigger regardless of what position it is. I think that'll be a little more emphasis this year. So he tried to cover it up by saying, hey, it's like everywhere on the team. But as we've kind of discussed behind the scenes as well, it does kind of feel like that his comments about Calijah Kancey specifically lead us to believe that he's kind of leaning towards the defensive line and maybe not relying on Calijah as much just based on the injury history of Calijah Kancey. This is what he had to say about Calijah when asked about how much they missed him last season. Remember, he only played the first 2 games, got injured, and then came back for the season finale. And Bowles went on to say, that had no bearing on the games that we could have won. Sheesh. You could use the energy and the talent, but there's going to be injuries every year. We're not making those excuses. We've got guys out there that we are confident they can go out and play and help us win the ball game. We just didn't get it done. So that wasn't a true ringing endorsement from Todd Bowles when talking about Calijah Kancey. Like, yeah, he was hurt, but we didn't need him to win those games. We should have won it on our own. And I thought that was very, it very much stood out with what he said about Calijah Kancey and talking about the getting bigger with this team as well.
Yeah, and you look, too, at what they've tried to do at the defensive tackle position, right? With Logan Hall, he was primarily a defensive end at Houston and played some inside, but he was about 260, 265 coming out of Houston. They drafted him to play defensive tackle because they wanted a more athletic specimen there. Keep in mind, this was in 2022 before Calijah Kancey was signed by the Buccaneers, or drafted by the Buccaneers in the first round, when they kind of realized Logan Hall wasn't exactly what they had hoped or thought he was going to be. And, to his credit, over his 4 years in Tampa, he's gotten close to 300 pounds, but he's had to add about 35 pounds of size, bulk of weight in the weight room to get up to playing around 300 pounds, right? For that 4-eye defensive end position, not edge rusher, but that 3-4 defensive tackle spot next to Vita Vea on the opposite side of Calijah Kancey. And then they had the same thing last year. They drafted Elijah Roberts, a big defensive end. Now, he was bigger coming out of SMU at around 280 pounds when he was on our post-draft podcast just literally days after being drafted by the Bucs. Elijah Roberts shared with us that he was up to already 290, 292. So he had put on some size. He was closer to 300 pounds. But I just wonder if Todd Bowles is saying, let's just go draft some 300-plus pound guys like Vita Vea, that are going to add some size up front that we need to help stop the run. Because, Matt, as you know, and you and I were there on the last day of those combine interviews, we saw some really big offensive linemen, not just tackles, guards that were like 320, 330 pounds. It just seems like each year offensive linemen get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you kind of need to have that size kind of being matched along the defensive line. Otherwise, you're going to get pushed around by double teams.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. You need to combat that with big defensive linemen as well, but guys that can still kind of motor and move around, because it's obviously the game has evolved and things like that. But you can have a big defensive lineman that can go north to south, but if teams want to, zone run it to death against you and have you go side to side, can you move laterally just as well? I think that's where you can take advantage of a lot of big defensive tackles that, sure, they got a good first step, but if that first step is only going forward, well, you just run a toss sweep to the outside and they got you dead to right. So I think it's very telling the type of defensive tackles that they had met formally during the NFL Combine. And, just because they have a formal meeting doesn't mean that the Bucs are necessarily going to draft you. We saw that with Kalijah Cansey specifically, but you look at Ohio State's Caden McDonald, 326 pounds he weighed in at. Lee Hunter, a guy we've been talking about since the Senior Bowl, 320 pounds. A couple of Florida players as well, or from the state of Florida. Gators defensive tackle, Caleb Banks, he's at 329 he was listed at. And then the Florida State Seminole, Darrell Jackson, he was gigantic just looking at in person. He's listed at 337. So almost two times it feels like two times the Logan Hall and Kalijah Cansey as well.
Don't forget about big Xavier Harris either from Ole Miss. I mean, he's bigger than all of them, right? I mean, he's 6'8", 300 and what was he weighing in at? Let me find it here. I just had it pulled up and I just canceled the screen. Combine results. Yeah, I mean, this guy was huge too. Now, the interesting thing is, I think when you look at players like Harris and players like Caleb Banks at 6'6", I kind of think their height works against them a little bit, and we kind of saw that too with I can't find his weight now, but he's around 330 plus pounds. But we've seen that now with Logan Hall, the long-legged defensive tackles. The size kind of works against them because they don't have great pad leverage. They get stood up a little bit. This is something that I remember talking with Will Golston, friend of the program, during his illustrious Buccaneer career, winning a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. He was 6'6", 300-plus pound guy, a monstrous fellow. But he would have to say every year, I got to work on my pad level. I got to work on my pad level. The long limbs and the height work great when you're standing at the line of scrimmage, knocking down passes, especially on third down, especially when it forces a punt. But Matt, sometimes when you're 6'3", 6'4", when you're going up against a similar sized interior offensive lineman, it almost works better because low man always wins in football. And when you have that natural leverage, sometimes, and I think that's what made Warren Sapp at 6'1" incredibly effective. We've seen Kalijah Cansey as a pass rusher at 6 feet tall be very effective with this quick first step where he's almost ducking under and between guys.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of mattered with the evolution of the quarterback as well, because no doubt about it, pad level is so important in the trenches. And if you are already lower to the ground and lower at that base level, it's kind of easier to scoot by. But then the thought process for a while, maybe it's because Drew Brees was in the division in the NFC South for so long. Hey, you get these big, tall, lanky guys, you get your hands up at the line of scrimmage, and bam, you can bat down these football, or at least get in the vision of the quarterback and kind of alter these throws. And I understand the thought process behind it, and that can certainly work. And we've seen, especially with Baker Mayfield, now he's on the smaller side, but we've seen how many times Baker has gotten his, passes batted down at the line of scrimmage. But the
Right.
reason the evolution of the quarterback has kind of come about is now guys like Baker Mayfield are such a rare commodity. Now you see the Josh Allens, the Justin Herberts, these big time quarterbacks that are either so large that, getting a hand in the face doesn't really bother them too much,
Right.
or they know how to get outside the pocket like Patrick Mahomes. Lamar Jackson obviously is an insane speedster, but the style of quarterback has kind of dictated the style of defender at every single position, but in this case, on the defensive line as well. So it's not like you want 100 Kalijah Canceys where they're small, stout, and can get to the
Correct.
pocket quickly, because there are other things that they do give up with their size. But at the same time, I don't know if you need an exact Logan Hall type of replica when you didn't necessarily get what you wanted from Logan Hall. I think pad level is always important to win with that consistency at the end of the day, but you don't exactly want a carbon copy of Kalijah Cansey at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And smaller guys tend to get banged up a little bit more, right? I mean, a big, Ndamukong Suh was just all muscle, right? I mean, he was 6'4", 310 pounds, and just rock solid, right? And a guy like Ndamukong Suh never missed a game due to injury in his entire NFL career. Only games he missed were suspensions. So
Yeah.
I think you want that type of rock solid player too. I'm thinking Vita Vea, even though he's slimmed down a little bit, still a big guy in the 340s. He may not be the 360, 370 he's been at some points of his career, but he's more solid now. He shed a lot of bad weight, and he's been healthier as a result, right? So I think getting more Vita Vea type players is a good thing. And whether it is a player like Caden McDonald. I love the war paint on this guy, man. He just goes full on. You have Tristan Wirfs, who puts like a couple stripes under his eyes, and of course, Aiden Hutchinson is famous for doing the one stripe, along his face. This guy just goes flat out, full on war paint, right? And then Lee Hunter, a big, agile guy. I mean, for his size to be able to move the way he does and penetrate, to me, this team, we've talked about it before. The sneaky position that's not really being talked about is defensive tackle, because if they are going to lose Logan Hall in free agency, and I suspect that they might, then they're going to need that other defensive tackle starter. And maybe it's Elijah Roberts, right? He's over 305 now, something like that. But you're still going to need depth. You're still going to need more players there. They have Jason Jones, who they re-signed, a big 6'6", 333-pound guy. I think that's the kind of guys they're looking for now. If you remember, they brought Elijah Simmons in. He is, he's like a dump truck, man. That guy's just massive too. That's what they're looking for. Those bigger, athletic defensive linemen. And you can still have a Kalijah Cansey, but he needs to kind of be that sniper type of guy, right? He needs to be that rocket launcher among the tanks that you have. And I just think this team needs some more tanks. Greg Gaines, he's listed at 300 pounds. I mean, Greg Gaines looks, what is he, like 5'10", maybe? 300 pounds? He's just like a bowling ball. But, they need to get some bigger bodies up front. I really believe that. So I think Todd Bowles is on the right thing there. At the same time, too, Matt, this team could stand to get bigger at inside linebacker. We had Jake Golday on the cover today, 6'4", 235 pounds. He's bigger than Levante David and Servastier Dennis for sure, even though, on the scale, Davis and Dennis are around 230 pounds. But, they could use some size at linebacker. Certainly not going to have the ultimate size guy in Sonny Styles. He's not going to be there at 15, Bucs fans. Sorry. He probably won't even make it to 10. To be honest, he is a top 5 pick as far as I can tell. But ideally, Matt, that's what you want, right? 6'5", 240 plus pounds.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why they call Sonny Styles a freakish athlete prototype. Yeah. But for sure, absolutely, the Bucs need a big size linebacker. One, just to have like that presence in the middle that I think has been lacking for a little bit, especially on top of the fact that the Bucs kind of have smaller players at other positions as well. We just kind of talked about defensive tackle, where yes, you have Logan Hall, but Kalijah Cansey is that smaller type of guy as well. Your nickel corner, Jacob Parrish, is certainly on the smaller side. And then Todd Bowles traditionally likes his safeties smaller as well, with Antoine Winfield Jr. certainly on that lighter side. Tyke Smith, maybe not as much, but he's a strong safety compared to a free safety. So you kind of need to find that size in another spot. And we know Bowles likes his corners on the larger side, but inside linebacker can definitely fit that billing as well, especially if it's, I mean, Sonny Styles, that would be, you would have to have so many trade ups. And it's a shame it's not a quarterback heavy draft, because if it was, then maybe you can convince yourself that Sonny Styles would, would drop there. But yeah, Golday certainly is someone that can get in that area. CJ Allen, just being the human hit stick, I think would be super important to this team as well. There's definitely size in this year's draft at inside linebacker, and we know the Bucs need to add to it. It's no secret. They only got two guys on the roster at the moment. So definitely try to fill it with size and win those one-on-one opportunities. I mean, we saw so many times last year the Bucs lose, Svase Dennis against Bijan Robinson or another running back. And maybe that's a little bit more speed than size, especially going against Bijan. But they just need their linebackers to win more of their matchups, whether it's a tight end. Like, remember that Seattle game? I know they ended up winning, but AJ Barner had a field
went off
against Tampa Bay. So the linebacker play is another key that can kind of unlock a lot of great stuff for the defense if they get it together this season.
Yeah. And then you look at Jacob Rodriguez, just, blew up at the combine. That didn't surprise me because in one of my many conversations with Jacob Rodriguez at the Senior Bowl, I didn't tell him I had a crush on him, but I think he kind of figured it out by the end of the week because I kept talking to him. But I remember talking to J-Rod as he was leaving the media session, and I said, "You've got some real sneaky athleticism. Like you're really going to show out at the combine, right?" And he's just kind of like, I think I'm going to surprise some people. I really, people don't, they're sleeping on me a little bit of my athleticism. I'm a pretty good athlete. He's a really good athlete is really what it showed. And he's got some size. He's not the biggest linebacker, but he's 6'1", 233. That is probably an inch taller than Levante and Servassier and right up there in terms of weight, maybe a few pounds heavier. Not the biggest guy, but he's not a small inside linebacker. And even though we loved what he did in Mobile, Matt, when you look at Kyle Lewis, who was one of those players they interviewed, if Todd Bowles wants bigger linebackers, this guy's probably not it. We're talking 5'10", about 220 pounds. He is more the size of a safety than he is a linebacker in the modern day. And if you really hone in on that pit tape, he's an overhang defender. He's an overhang linebacker, which means he kind of plays in the slot. And there are some times where he literally lined up in the slot against not just tight ends, but also wide receivers. So in this instance, if Todd Bowles wants bigger players, it might rule out someone like Kyle Lewis unless this team looks at him as a safety type and drafts him at 6 foot 220 or 5'10", 5'11", 220. Then he would be one of the bigger safeties on this team.
Yeah, I think he started out as a safety and then eventually moved to linebacker. But you see that a lot with players like Brian Urlacher famously was a safety at New Mexico State and then obviously became a Hall of Fame inside linebacker with the Bears. Sonny Styles, and again, odds are very high that he's not going to end up going to Tampa Bay. But he was a guy that started at safety or played at safety at Ohio State and then decided to move to inside linebacker because he thought it would help the team. And lo and behold, it did. He won a national championship. He had a great career, and the team won a lot of games when he was there as well. So it's funny. We're talking about guys like Styles and Jacob Rodriguez, who we've talked previously on the show about how maybe let's not pay attention to like the RAS scores and all of these things, and let's just look for true football players. Yeah. And then like the people that we've looked at before the testing even comes about that we've fallen in love with, they're having the best scores out of everyone else. So it just shows that the draft is not a perfect science. Right. But I wouldn't mind Lewis. If the Bucs want to take a chance on it and move him to the safety position, why not? Just look for ball players at this point. Like, obviously, you're not going to put a defensive tackle at corner or something stupid like that. But just find ball players, guys that want to go out there, put everything on the line, play hard-nosed, be physical, play
Yep.
free at the same time. I think that's what this defense needs more than
I agree.
anything else.
I mean, he's
You
a
need guys
playmaker.
that, yeah, you need guys that, and I'll put in quotations for those listening on audio, fit Todd Bowles' defense.
Hmm.
But you need playmakers, you need ballers, you need guys that just want to go out and play,
Yeah.
and then figure it out, the piece of the puzzles after it.
And I think when you look at the new trend, and it kind of started in Seattle and LA, going with 13 personnel a lot. I mean, that was Sean McVay's kind of his base attack was 2 receivers and 3 tight ends at times. Um, Kyle Lewis is the perfect chess piece for combating 12 and 13 personnel because you don't want to have a nickel defender on the field that's 195 pounds. You really can't play nickel. It forces you to play base. But then if you have Kyle Lewis in there, he can match up with those tight ends on vertical routes easily. And he's got enough size at 220. He's going to hang better in the box and tackle better than a nickel defender would, who's maybe 20 pounds lighter. So, he does have a place in the modern day NFL. We'll see if it ends up being in Tampa. I love him for the coverage skills. Matt, you were talking about linebackers who started off at safety. This guy right here, Kendall Daniels, had a chance to interview him. He was a safety at Oklahoma State and then was an NIL target and transferred across the state to Oklahoma, where he played for the Sooners last year. 6'5", 242 pounds. So similar body type to Sonny Styles. And again, he grew out of being a safety and into being a linebacker, a very athletic, hard-hitting type, probably a day 3 guy. When I say that, think 4th round, maybe 3rd round if he tests well. He didn't test in Indy, but he'll have a chance to run at his pro day when Oklahoma's pro day comes up. But you look at him, he is a player too. You talk about size, 6'5", 242, that can cover like a safety and hit like a linebacker. And he's starting to get some of those linebacker instincts where you're playing a lot closer to the line of scrimmage. You're in the box rather than, having that 15 to 20 yard viewpoint from being back there either in the free or closer to the line of scrimmage, a strong safety. But very interesting developmental type, big time athlete, good hitter. He's also on the Bucs radar. He got a formal interview as well.
And from as much as we like to kind of dog Todd Bowles for some of the issues on this team, I think a player that can kind of roam around in different spots is something that Todd Bowles can kind of use and maybe kind of get the best out of here with Daniels, knowing that it is kind of a game of chess when it comes to Todd Bowles. And anyone that's going to just fly around and play free, I think can already be an immediate upgrade over Savassi Dennis. Now, Voss obviously has the experience and was a traditional inside linebacker, but I think at times we just fell in love with, he got an interception off of Connor Bazelak and Kyle Trask. He's going to be incredible because he was doing it in rookie minicamp and OTAs and stuff like that. And that's true. I mean, you want to see the guy play well, but it wasn't happening in like the preseason, or he'd be hurt for the preseason. It definitely didn't show up in game. So I'm already looking for more size and more athleticism. And if Daniels can kind of fit that, I'm all for it.
Yeah. As Bill Vincent says here, thanks for being a Pewter Report TV channel member. Derek Brooks was a safety at FSU. He was, but he was an All-American linebacker. Now, there was some talk that he was going to have to play safety at the NFL, but Tampa Bay didn't see that as being the case. However, at 6 foot, 215, 220, whatever he came out of Florida State, that was a long time ago. Offensive linemen gotten a lot bigger and a lot more athletic since then. I'm not saying Derek Brooks wouldn't still be great in this day and age, but he would have to be bigger than he was back then just because of the fact that back then there weren't as many 300-pound offensive linemen as there are now. Now it's like, if you're not 300 pounds, you're just not playing offensive line in the league, where on the same Super Bowl team that he won a championship with back in 2002, Jeff Christie, the Bucs starting center, was 255 pounds. So would Derek Brooks be as effective in today's game as he was then at his size? I'm not going to doubt Derek Brooks, but he would probably have had to add some more size to be able to hang and stack and shed and do some of those things that he was able to do back then against smaller offensive linemen. But now, against the bigger modern day offensive linemen, he would just have to get bigger to be able to handle those bigger bodies.
Yeah, it's just funny how much the game has grown, and the players literally have grown as well. But we got a couple super chats, so we'll start it
Yeah.
off with Fear Factor, both spelled with a PH and the Fear and Factor.
Love
Thank
it.
you for the $1.99 super chat. We appreciate it. Says, what about Bradley Chubb to the Bucs? Remember, he got cut by the Miami Dolphins a little while ago as they were kind of shedding a lot of players to create more cap room.
So I've not heard this particularly, but I'm kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit, looking at what the Bucs did last year with Hassan Reddick, and we'll talk about the edge rushers in a second here too, because that's part of the equation in terms of getting bigger. But this guy right here, maybe this was who Todd Bowles was talking about. 240-pound edge rusher, Hassan Reddick, really way too light, didn't have much interest in stopping the run and playing the run, and wasn't effective as a pass rusher, right? So Bradley Chubb is a bigger edge rusher for sure. He would add some size there. But the reason why they signed Hassan Reddick is because, they were still high on Chris Braswell, who was a second-round pick. They had just drafted David Walker in the 4th round. They were hoping one of those guys would ascend to become a starter in 2026. And of course, that has not happened and won't happen this year. You can't count on Walker. He hasn't played it down in pads yet. He got hurt in training camp before they even went to pads. And of course, Chris Braswell, he of 2.5 career sacks in 2 years, has not developed. I think he's a bust. I think he lacks instincts. But the premise was to have Hassan Reddick on a 1-year deal. So either if he blows up, then you have a chance, well, do we want to keep him again? Do we want to franchise him? Or if he doesn't, which he didn't, then you just let him go. But the thing too with Bradley Chubb is he's probably going to want a multi-year deal. And Matt, I think the players they're looking for at edge rusher are going to be 1-year deal guys like Khalil Mack, who is a much bigger player than Hassan Reddick is. You can just see by the physique. And or Joey Bosa, who is with the Bills. Bosa's 6'5", 269 pounds. I mean, he's, think more like Yaya Diaby size, and still a very good athlete. 5 sacks last year, 5 forced fumbles. Was, I want to say, in the top 10 in terms of edge rushers, according to Pro Football Focus's pass rush grade, and was healthy last year. And keep in mind, Marcus West, the new defensive line coach, was his defensive line coach up in Buffalo last year. So you can get some intel. So with Tampa Bay poised to draft an edge rusher, I would say in the first 3 rounds this year, plus you feel pretty good about Walker. And I'm not sure if they're going to give up on Braswell this year or not, but he's still on the team. It seems to me that instead of locking up a guy that has had an injury past like Bradley Chubb for a multi-year deal, doesn't seem like what they want to do. They'd rather go with a 1-year deal, even for an older player, see how it works. I don't know if Trey Hendrickson is in their price range or not. Probably a little too pricey, but we'll see what the market is for Hendrickson. But Matt, it just feels like a 1-year deal rather than a multi-year deal like Bradley Chubb would probably get elsewhere. And then you hope that either Walker or the guy you draft in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round develops into being that, because it's important probably to have your other starting edge rusher on a rookie deal, a cheaper guy, because you're going to have Yaya Diaby getting a big-time contract extension either this year or next year, and he's going to be making around $20 million a year.
Yeah, and I think there are other edge rushers that could be traded for. I'm not trying to name names because we have battle plans coming out. Or edge rushers that could reach free agency next season that you'd be more inclined to hitch your wagon to for a multi-year deal because they are younger or more efficient, whatever the case may be, where Chubb is at the point of his career now where, like, you're not trying to fool teams, but you're trying to sell teams still on the production that you had. And Hassan Reddick is a perfect example of that. That's why the Jets traded for him, where the Eagles were fine with letting him go. Yeah. And that's why Reddick wanted that new contract with the Jets. And that's why he sat out for a while. Maybe he knew, like, his skills are diminishing. And that's why you want to get that thing signed and written so you do guarantee your money. And again, he's not going to Tampa and signing with Tampa being like, oh, I'm going to fool them. Hassan Reddick wanted to record double-digit sacks
That's
with
right.
Tampa Bay. But the money he got, over $10 million, he's not getting anywhere near that this year
Right.
because it worked out so terribly in Tampa. And again, I don't blame Jason Light for rolling the dice and wanting to go after him. But the reason this applies to Chubb is guys like Bosa, Khalil Mack, once you get to that 1-year deal, you're kind of stuck to that for the rest of your career. It's very rare that you're post 30s. He's 29 now, but once you get to your 30s, that you're going to sign a long-term contract. He's probably got one more year for that 3-year deal if he wants to get it, and there's no reason for Tampa to give it to him on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, so. Matt, you mentioned our Bucs battle plans, and they're coming out tomorrow. As a matter of fact, on pewterreport.com. Mine will be out at noon tomorrow. We have our annual Bucs battle plans presented by Rugged Pirate Beard Company. Some fantastic scents in their beard oils and beard butters. So make sure you check out ruggedpiratebeard.com for all of the amazing scents. I want to say they've got close to 50 different scented beard oils and butters. So if you have got a beard, make sure you take care of it and have it smelling fantastic and get rid of that itch and irritation and keep your beard hydrated with Rugged Pirate Beard Company. And those Bucs battle plans will be coming out on a daily basis, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which is technically the start of free agency on pewterreport.com. So make sure you check that out. I kick things off tomorrow with mine at noon. And tomorrow on the Pewter Report podcast, because we still have 2 more podcasts this week for our regular podcast, can the Bucs win without Mike Evans? I had a conversation today with Derek Gilmore, his agent. I'll get into the details of that tomorrow. And that will be tomorrow's show at 4 o'clock. And then on Thursday, our Bucs 2026 free agency preview show. Then Matt and I will have another Pewter Insider show for our Pewter Premier and Platinum members on Friday at 1:30. Topic to be determined, probably something free agency related. But the cool thing is we have a new Pewter Platinum member, Ash Basher 613. Just became a Pewter Platinum member. And then we've got Robbie Gordon, Texas, who has also become a Pewter Report TV channel member. Greatly appreciate that. Robbie also says, thank you, PR, for all of the amazing work. We greatly appreciate that. If you want to support our channel, you know how to do it. And if not, I'll let you know real quick. Become a Pewter Report TV channel member. It will help us in terms of our travel budget and doing fun things like going to the combine and getting all the information and scoop for you guys. 4 different membership levels. Hit the join button on the front page of Pewter Report TV. It'll have all of the information there with the different price points. Pick the one that fits your budget best and the one that has the most perks that also get you going. I will let you know the Pewter Premier member and the Pewter Platinum member, those are the 2 membership levels that have access to our Pewter Insider shows every Friday. So thank you very much for your support of Pewter Report TV.
Yes, thank you for those that have became new members, and thanks for the super chats, everybody, including this next one coming up from Darius the Great with the $1.99 super chat. Appreciate it. Says trade a 4th rounder for Tremaine Edmonds, then trade down and get CJ. I believe talking about CJ Allen. That'd be one way to fix the inside linebacker room. The thing is, are the Bears okay with trading Tremaine Edmonds, after just getting him not too long ago? And I think they signed him to a $72 million deal, if I'm not mistaken.
There's been some reports that he's going to be on the block to be traded. So maybe that's in play. It will be interesting to see what they end up doing in free agency. We have a Pewter Report roundtable today where 3 of us talked about getting some new linebackers. Everybody from Devin Bush to Quincy Williams to Leo Chanel. I'll drop that in the chat for everybody to check out. But I got to imagine they're going to draft 1 or 2 inside linebackers and then probably sign 1 free agents inside linebacker as well. One of the guys probably should mention in terms of size, just because I know him personally, Wade Woodhouse, right here from Tampa, Florida, played at Clemson, was a 3-year starter there. 6'3", 236 pounds. So again, another big option, probably a late round draft pick, 6th, 7th round, maybe an undrafted free agent signing, but really good special teams player. And as Todd Bowles said, and he's not wrong, they only have 2 linebackers on this roster. They're going to take at least 6 to camp. We know Servassier Dennis is going to be one of those, along with Nick Jackson. There's two. They got to find at least 4 more linebackers through free agency, the draft, and undrafted free agency. Remember, Nick Jackson was one of those undrafted free agents. He and John Bullock started off on the practice squad this year. Actually, Bullock was on the active roster and kind of bounced back and forth a little bit. But yeah, I would like to see them get a little bit bigger at inside linebacker for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'd be in a 4th rounder for Edmonds. The problem with trading down for CJ Allen is, one, you might be able to get him at 15 if you wait and stay patient. If not, you still got Jacob Rodriguez on the back end if you want to do that as well. But if you trade down for CJ, you're likely giving up, I don't know, a 3rd round pick as well. So then you're already out your 3rd round pick, your 4th round pick, and you swapped with the 1st round pick. But you do get 2 inside linebackers in that sense as well. So something to definitely chew over. But I don't know about trading down in the first for a linebacker that could end up falling to you anyway.
Yeah. And I think C.J. Allen can probably go anywhere between 12, which is where the Dallas Cowboys will be picking. And then I think he could slide down into the 20s. You know, he's a really good, steady player, but doesn't have the splash plays that some other linebackers have in terms of creating takeaways and all that. Don't get me wrong. If the Bucs ended up with C.J. Allen, I love Georgia Bulldogs. He's a really good player. I'm just saying that is he worth number 15, or can you trade down to get him? You know, we'll see. We'll ultimately find out on draft day. It just takes one team to like you, and we found that out, 2 years ago with Michael Penix. The Falcons were that one team that drafted him inside the top 10, which was kind of crazy.
Yes, it was. And then they ended up needing him, but now he's injured. And yeah, a lot of crazy stuff over in Atlanta, but that's not the Bucs' problem. Not just yet.
Yep.
Deep Blues, thank you for this $1.99 super chat. Says deny Dennis Sutton, 6'5", 265, maybe a 3rd/4th round pick.
Yeah, I've gotten the sense that the Bucs are not crazy about deny Dennis Sutton, and he did not receive a formal interview from the team. And even when I talked to him at the Senior Bowl, he said the Bucs haven't shown much interest in him. He's an okay player, but I've heard that the team is not terribly enamored with him. I'm not sure if that's something on the field, off the field, whatever. But he may not be the Bucs' cup of tea there. But it's interesting, right? Because if Todd Bowles wants some bigger guys, on the team in terms of edge rushers, right? Cassius Howell is a player that is not real big, 248 pounds. He's got some smaller arms, but still hell of a pass rusher. Don't get it twisted. We love Cassius Howell over here at Pewter Report. But when you look at his size compared to, say, the size of like Akeem Messidor, right, who is closer to Yaya Diaby in terms of being around 260 pounds. I think Diaby's a little bit bigger, 265. But, Messidor is a bigger, bulkier type. R. Mason Thomas is 2nd rounder, probably more akin to Cassius Howell size-wise. Same thing with Romello Height, who is kind of jacked up, but still around 240 pounds, more like the size that Hassan Reddick has. So after seeing Hassan Reddick last year in Todd Bowles' defense, does he shy away from some of those players and go with some bigger players? Gabe Akis is more Yaya Diaby size. He's an edge rusher, 2nd leading sacker all time at Illinois. And then you've got Malachi Lawrence, who is more akin to, say, Chris Braswell's size in the 250s. And then the Dame Tucker, a player that you and I like, Matt, from the Senior Bowl, really undersized guy, in the 240s. Again, more like Cassius Howell, more like Romello Height, more like Hassan Reddick.
I do like the Dame Tucker a lot, especially after hearing him talk as well.
Yeah.
But that does not fall in line as kind of the topic about, big player and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, just because Todd Bowles says one thing doesn't mean Jason Licht. Now, obviously, they want to be simpatico with a lot of this stuff, but just because Todd wants one thing doesn't mean Jason necessarily agrees with it at the same standpoint. Now, they do have a good working relationship. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Bucs have found success with different types of edge rushers that they've acquired in one way or another, whether it was trading for JPP or signing Shaq Barrett, but kind of finding that dominant edge rusher to be the leader of the pack for their group has kind of slipped by the wayside for them. Again, not for a lack of effort, and Yaya Diaby is kind of proven to be the best of the bunch, but
Yeah.
they need to upgrade there. And some of these names, can they play? What's their motor like? I think that's just as important as their overall size. So
Yeah.
maybe doesn't necessarily fit the Todd Bowles billing, but the I am that man aspect of it certainly rings true.
Yeah, and I think too when you look at the edge rusher room, right? We know that Yaya Diaby is going to be on the team. We know David Walker is going to be on the team. I would assume they're going to give Chris Braswell a third year, but I don't think he's necessarily locked to make the team if they get other players. But if you were to get a Joey Bosa, and then draft the Nadeem Tucker and have Tucker as that situational pass rusher, where he's really just coming in for some third down heat, I'd be fine with that. Right? This is a guy with a 20% plus pass rush win rate, can get to the quarterback, can force some fumbles. If that's all he does, remember that they had a guy, Cam Gill, who split a sack with Ndamukong Suh in the Super Bowl, who was a very undersized speed rusher off the edge. So, if you want to pare down the outside linebacker room, Marquise Watts is not coming back, right? So there's a spot there. And as long as Nadeem Tucker could play special teams and be that outside linebacker 5, I'm fine with that. Dress him on game days, have him cover kicks and punts, and have him as a situational pass rusher out there with Yaya Diaby or Joey Bosa or whoever you end up having as that other guy that's going to get to the quarterback. And of course, not all passes happen on third down. Sometimes teams are throw first on first down, but at least you have an undersized guy for those obvious pass rush situations, 3rd and long, 2nd and 20, things like that, where you can deploy him and he helps your pass rush. Because, the guys they had last year, Anthony Nelson, Chris Braswell on that second line, they just weren't getting it done.
And that's what makes David Walker such a X factor / kind of wild card in all of this. Because if the Bucs are able to essentially build their edge rusher room, knowing with who they have, but then they go with like a veteran signing, like you mentioned, like a Bosa or some of the other guys out there, and then draft an edge rusher in the 1st or 2nd round. If Walker can prove that he can be a legitimate NFL player and help with the overall pass rush, well, then that slides everyone else down. And then you're kind of living in a world where you can have Chris Braswell and Anthony Nelson essentially fighting for the 5th spot at edge rusher. Because you have Yaya and then, like, let's just say Bosa, your draft pick, David Walker, and then bam, you got Anthony Nelson and Chris Braswell as outside linebacker 5. And then, who knows what happens there. Anthony Nelson's been a veteran that's proven it for a while. Chris Braswell, it's without question, without question, a make or break kind of year. But if that battles for 5th string, I have no problem with it at all.
Exactly. I'm with you on that too. So, those are the 3 position groups there, right? When you look at your front 7, defensive tackle, inside linebacker, outside linebacker, where I think size kind of does matter. And, we know that Todd Bowles always kind of prefers having some bigger cornerbacks outside. I don't think that's changed too much. We know that he likes to have, that 5'10" type of safety that can really flip the hips. He doesn't like long-legged guys in the slot. So you're always going to have your slot defenders and your nickel corners and your safeties be more of that 5'10", 5'11" type, like Winfield and Tyke Smith and Christian Izzian and Jacob Parrish there. So when you're looking at getting bigger, it's probably going to be in that front 7. And I'm all about it. I'm all about adding some more size as long as you're not sacrificing some speed, because Ndamukong Suh, when he first came to the Buccaneers in 2019, had a couple really good years. Then in 2021, teams just started to run laterally on the Buccaneers because they're like, listen, we're not going to just try to bang our heads in the A and the B gaps between Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea, right? Especially with Devin White and Levante David behind those guys. It just doesn't make sense. So teams started to try to run laterally on the Buccaneers. I remember you and I were talking to Robert Saleh at the NFL annual meeting when he was still the Jets coach, in that infamous game where there was the peace out by AB and Tom Brady threw the touchdown pass at the very last minute to beat the Jets in a game that should have been closer than, or shouldn't have been as close as it was. But the Jets were one of those teams that started to run laterally on the Buccaneers, right? And get to the edges and make those defensive tackles move. And at age 31, 32, whatever old Ndamukong Suh was at the time, he just lost some of that lateral speed. So if they can get some young defensive tackle types, some big 300-plus pounders, rather than just trying to make defensive tackles out of guys like, Logan Hall and Elijah Roberts. I think Roberts has more upside than Hall. Then maybe that's a good thing. The one guy we haven't talked about a lot is Keldrick Falk out of Auburn. I see him mocked to the Buccaneers a lot. 6'6", 280 pounds. First of all, he's a 4-3 defensive end. He's not an outside linebacker in a 3-4. And he's not the prototype 4-eye defensive end / tackle that this team has had in Will Golston before and has tried to manufacture in guys like Will Golston or in Logan Hall and Elijah Roberts. So it's like I don't see a place for Falk. He's not an interior guy. He's more of an exterior guy, but he is. The 2 sacks last year don't excite me. Like he's going to be good for somebody. Yeah, he's going to be good for somebody, but he's not going to be a Buccaneer. I see all these mock drafts with him being in there to Tampa Bay, and I can think of about 10 or 12 outside linebackers I'd rather see in Tampa Bay than this guy, who, again, has a lot of talent. Okay, great. He's a first-round pick. He's just not going to be a Buccaneer.
He just doesn't have the size for what Tampa Bay wants to do. Like, I can't even imagine him going on the interior. Like, at least Logan Hall and Roberts had, like, a little more bulk to them. But him, just looking at that picture, nowhere close to, what Tampa Bay needs.
Yep, for sure. So we'll see. It's always a fun exercise. We mentioned the Bucs battle plans that are coming out tomorrow on Pewter Report. The fun thing about this is we all keep our battle plans secret. So we don't share in the infamous Pewter Report group chat. We don't share who's doing what and who's signing who and who's drafting who. But the cool thing about these is each Pewter Reporter has their own mock draft. So if you like mock drafts, you're going to get 5 of them. One from me, one from Matt, one from Sly, one from Bailey, one from Josh. And then we have our own free agent signings. We also put together our own 53-man roster, the way too early Bucs roster, including our draft picks and our free agent signings. I just did my mock draft today. I'm very happy with it. And I think it's going to get, I think y'all are going to hate my free agency class right now. I'll just tell you that, but you're going to love my draft. I feel pretty confident my draft is really good. So if you know me, I try to be as close to what I think the Buccaneers will actually do. I try to put on my Jason Light hat. I get a little timid in free agency, kind of like Jason does, but I'm much more gung-ho with my trades when it comes to the draft. And Jason has had his moments. I'm not going to give away too much, but I get a little bit more aggressive in the draft than I do in free agency. But I try to keep my Bucs battle plan as close to what I think the Buccaneers are going to do. And, and then I let the other Pewter reporters run wild. Usually Josh Capo comes out of left field and he's going to be like, right. I'm getting Warren Sapp out of retirement. I know he can still rush the pass. Exactly. Things like that. So, it's a fun series, and it's fun to see how each one of our Bucs battle plans kind of come to fruition. And, Sly always tries to load up on Wisconsin players and Packer players and all of that because that's where he's from. But it's going to be good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll see how it plans out. But also, we need to give a shout out and a thank you to all of our Pewter Platinum members. Thank you so much for your support of PewterReport.com and Pewter Report TV. We'll let your name scroll to the bottom there because there's so many of you now. But thank you so much for your support, and we'll have that Pewter Insider on Friday at 1:30 for Pewter Platinum and Premier members. Trey Hendrickson. It's just so interesting how, like,
Yeah.
last offseason, he was the talk of the town here on the
Yep.
Pewter Report podcast and amongst Bucs fans. And then injuries played a role. The Bengals, they're not going to franchise tag him.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be something if he ends up in Tampa Bay a year later after all the generated buzz around him?
Yeah, you know what? One of my absolute favorite players. I remember being at the East-West Shrine practices back when they were over in St. Petersburg, and talking to Trey Hendrickson. He was a Florida Atlantic Owl at the time, and just loved the pass rush tenacity. And when he finally got an opportunity to rush the passer in New Orleans, he put up 13 sacks. And of course, they'd already drafted uh, Marcus Davenport in the first round, right?
Yeah.
And so they had to kind of force that path for him to get on the field, and they didn't want to pay a bunch of money. But I mean, the Saints let him go, and they should have kept him. Obviously, Cam Jordan is the other edge rusher that they had in New Orleans. But Hendrickson is just, ever since he got to Cincinnati, he's been a 4-time Pro Bowler. Didn't make the Pro Bowl last year, but just put up crazy numbers. Back-to-back years of 17 and a half sacks in 2023 and 2024, and absolutely loved him. But he has a serious hip pelvic core injury that required surgery. And as you get older, he's 30, he'll be 31. As you reach that age, your body starts breaking down. I've just seen it too many times here in Tampa, just with Simeon Rice, Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul. That is typically around the age between 30 and 32 where production just falls off the map. Hassan Reddick, 31 years old last year, Matt, 2.5 sacks, right? So would I love to see a one-year flyer on Trey Hendrickson? Abso-friggin-lutely. At $20 million a year, no thank you. If it's reasonable, if it's $14 million, if you're going to say we're going to give you the same contract that we gave Hassan Reddick, yeah, I would go for that. I would say, sure. If you're going to spend some money on an edge rusher in free agency, I'll take that bet, and hopefully you can get somewhere between 7 to 10 sacks or more out of Trey Hendrickson. He is a Florida guy. I want to say he's from the Orlando area. He played at FAU. So a little homecoming, I think, might help. It might help to get him back in the home state. We'll see. I'd love to see it, but the price tag kind of scares me a little bit there. But you know what? Again, the thing is sometimes when you get to free agency, there's always 2-3 guys that just don't get the money they were expecting. We saw that a couple years ago here in Tampa with Jim Eldine, right? They thought $16, $17 million a year in free agency, and he re-signed for $13 million, which is $3 to $4 million less per year. So sometimes the market just isn't there. If everybody's scared about that injury, you're going to see the price come down. If one team is saying, "Yeah, we'll take a chance on you at $20 million," then guess what? He's a $20 million edge rusher.
That's what makes me wonder is how much will his injury, and because of his injury, lack of production, how much does that drive the price down? Because if it's anything under 10 million, I think you take a shot at it. At that point, why not? Now, of course, it'll depend on who else is available at the time and at the moment. And I think it also matters for Hendrickson too. He hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. Certainly he wants to win a title while also ideally getting paid at the same time. So, it's not the Bucs of a couple seasons ago where it's automatically like, oh, they're going to win their division, they'll be a title contender, and you get to play in the state of Florida. Like, there's not that same exact appeal going into this season as there has been in other seasons. So that's something that Hendrickson has to decide as well, as much as Tampa Bay may want him. And then Meets McGee has been a Pewter Report YouTube channel member for 14 months now. Thank you so much. Says, good day, gents. Peter Woods could be a sneaky pick, the Clemson D tackle.
Yeah. Not a great finisher. He's one of those guys that he will penetrate. He'll cause some disruption in the backfield. He is not a good finisher. Reminds me a little bit of like the defensive tackle version of Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Like, what did we call JTS here? Almost, right? Because he almost got there. Almost. Kind of the same thing with Peter Woods. Big guy, very quick, very athletic, very agile, backfield penetrator. He's a disruptor, but not a great finisher. And he did not get, to our knowledge, a formal interview with the Buccaneers either. So sometimes the top guys just don't get those formal invites. Maybe he's one of those players that, told a fib, or maybe they circled back around to him after the time at the podium and decided to do a formal interview. We don't know, but to our knowledge, that was not the case. The defensive tackles that they interviewed again at the combine: Caden McDonald, Lee Hunter, Caleb Banks, Daryl Jackson, Xavier Harris, and Tyler Onyedem. So those are the ones that we were able to ascertain in terms of the defensive tackles. It's not as robust of a group as other positions, right? I think there's a lot of inside linebackers, a lot of edge rushers, defensive tackle. There's some guys, but it's not as deep with the rich talent as it is at other positions on defense.
Tall Florida guy says, I'll sign Trey Hendrickson to a 3-year deal right now. I don't know if I'd sign him to a 3-year deal.
I wouldn't do that, yeah.
I think Trey Hendrickson has fallen into that category of being a once-a-year type of edge rusher. For sure.
We wanted to let you know a couple things. If you are in need of legal representation, well, I got the draft picks that you need to select, and that is the Jorgensen Law Firm.
At Jorgensen Law, we aren't just a law firm, we're a family business. For over 30 years, our firm has stood up for people when they need it most. Our family represents individuals and families who are injured or disabled and are facing some of the most stressful, difficult moments of their lives. From personal injury and workers' compensation to Social Security disability claims, we know how overwhelming the process can feel, and we believe each client deserves personal attention.
We fight for you like family, and we charge no fees or costs unless we recover for you. If you've been hurt or can't work due to injury or illness, call Jorgensen Law at 727-347-7733. Experience, integrity, and advocacy you can trust.
No fees for you until they win for you, which is great. They're the champions of the injured and disabled. Grady and Spencer Jorgensen, two fantastic guys, huge Tampa Bay fans, and big fans of Pewter Report's podcast as well. So keep those gentlemen in mind if you need help for personal injury, for workers' comp, or for Social Security benefits. So great people we can refer you to there. Also, too, we should note it's the weather outside is great, better than it is in Indianapolis. And that means it's time to play some golf. And Heritage Isles Golf and Country Club is a fantastic course up here in my neck of the woods up in New Tampa, ranked in the top 3 best value courses, which means, hey, it's not that expensive, in Tampa, St. Petersburg by Golf Advisor. For tee times, give them a call at 813-907-7447 or visit them on the web at heritageilesgolf.com. Again, it's a country club. You can join it, become a member, but it's also open to the public. So if you just want to go grab some buddies and get a golf cart and play in a foursome, there you go. Make this your new challenge when it comes to finding a new golf course, right? Because sometimes you want a different course to play. And if you have not played Heritage Isles Golf and Country Club, picturesque greens, beautiful scenery, and some challenging greens as well. So give Heritage Isles a look on the web at heritageilesgolf.com.
And just a reminder for everybody, tomorrow's show, can the Bucs win without Mike Evans? We'll talk about if there's a world where Mike Evans is playing in the NFL, but not with the Bucs, and how the rest of the team would look without him. And then Thursday, we're going to preview free agency for the Bucs, the outlook of their cap and cash situation, who they might be looking at, some players that are going to be on the move as well. So that's Thursday's show. And then we'll have a Pewter Insider on Friday as well for Pewter Platinum and Premier members. In the meantime, if you're not already doing so, please make sure you follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Pewter Report. And our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. So please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below on what you think the Bucs should do. Should they draft a bigger sized player in this year's draft, maybe within the first 3 rounds? So that's it for today's show. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.